In the midst of the red dusty plain in central Myanmar, as the early sun just touches the gold-plated temple roofs, more than 2,000 ancient structures rise like arrows pointing straight to the sky. This is Bagan, the Buddhist capital of the Pagan kingdom from the 9th to 13th centuries. No steel, no cement, no machinery, but thousands of brick temples still stand firm through 800 years of earthquakes, monsoons, and wars. Where does the secret lie? In the type of brick that is almost immune to weather, perfect arch building techniques, or the way to distribute weight on soft ground. In this journey, Logic Relic will join you to decode Bagan, where each brick is a tough question for even modern engineers. Chapter 1: History and Context. The sunset light stretches across the barren plain, dyeing red the thousands of sharp-pointed stupas rising from the ground like spears of time. The space in Bagan at dusk has a special light, the light that many photographers call the last golden light of the ancient world. From above, the pagodas and temples large and small spread out in the undulating rhythm of the Archaeology River, like a grand orchestra in silence, singing again the song that echoed more than a millennium ago. Bagan is not just an architectural complex. It is a manifesto of a golden era, when the Pagan kingdom dominated the lower reaches of the Archaeology River from the 9th to 13th centuries. History records that in 1044, under King Anurata, Pagan became the largest center of power and religion in ancient Burma, bringing Theravada Buddhism to the center of political and spiritual life. The combination of royal power and religious faith created an unprecedented wave of construction, where thousands of brick structures arose in a few short centuries, turning Bagan into the city of 4,000 temples, as described by archaeologist Gordon H. Luce in early 20th century records. What is special about Bagan, as emphasized in the 2019 report by the UNESCO World Heritage Center when recognizing this place as a World Heritage Site, is the choice of fired brick as the foundation for most structures, despite the availability of stone blocks in the upstream area for exploitation. The reason lies not only in geological factors. The clay along the Archaeology River is rich in minerals and easy to shape, but also in unique firing and mortar mixing techniques, which became the signature of Bagan in construction history. The focus on developing brick structures also reflects a complex geohistorical context. Central Myanmar at that time was a semi-arid region, with little prolonged heavy rain, minimizing brick erosion risks, and simultaneously facilitating stucco surface maintenance. But geography is not the only determinant. Culture and religion also play a role. The stupas are not merely places of worship. They were built to mark merits, affirm power, and express the belief that durable structures reflect the eternity of the Dharma. Historian Then Tun, in his monograph, History of Buddhism in Burma, once remarked that each brick in Bagan is a vow in fired clay, carrying spiritual weight equal to its material value. If viewed from a geological and hydrological map, Bagan is in a special position, a land high enough to avoid monsoon floods, but close enough to the river for transporting materials and labor. This explains why the structures are densely concentrated in an area of only about 40 square kilometers, creating a rare density of heritage. This concentration factor has made Bagan a giant laboratory for ancient engineers, where they could experiment with various designs, from high load-bearing arches to floating foundations on weak soil. When the sun sets completely behind the horizon, the shadows of the pagodas stretch long on the ground, as if retelling the thousand-year story of a city that never sleeps in human memory. And that is also where the secrets of materials, techniques, and enduring capabilities will gradually be revealed in the following chapters, starting from the very red brick that has created an entire legend. Chapter 2: Materials, Brick, Mortar, and Stucco, the Secret of 1,000 Years. If the brick is the cell that makes up the body of Bagan, then the clay here is its flesh and blood. The clay along the Archaeology River contains high levels of kaolinite and elite minerals, combined with just enough natural sand to avoid excessive shrinkage when fired. Ancient craftsmen often selected clay in the dry season, when the water level receded low to easily exploit deep mineral-rich layers. Then, the clay was dried to reduce moisture, kneaded in large pits by foot or wooden mallets, sometimes adding rice straw ash, rice husks, or sugarcane fibers to create air escape channels in the brick. According to the Science of Conservation report, this technique forms a uniform porous microstructure, making the brick lightweight, but with good compression resistance, while reducing the risk of cracking due to temperature changes. The firing process is an art requiring generational experience. Tunnel-like kilns, long and with earthen arched roofs, were stacked with bricks in large blocks, interspersed with gaps for even heat flow. The main fuel was acacia wood or hard firewood that burns long, controlled to maintain a stable temperature of about 800 to 900 degrees Celsius for many days. At this threshold, the clay minerals transform into stable mullite and quartz phases, providing superior weathering resistance. Materials researcher than Zha Yu at the 2018 Yangon University Conference once remarked, Bagan bricks are not just fired products, but the result of a perfect balance between heat, time, and minerals. Bagan's mortar, Kallet, is an interesting mystery. The mixture includes lime fired from local limestone, river sand, fine clay, and plant ash, creating a microstructural matrix that is flexible when freshly applied and solid when dry. Recent mineral chemical analyses using EDX and XRD published in MDPI materials have detected active silica and natural pozzolan minerals in the mortar, which react with lime to form calcium silicate hydrate, a compound that continues to strengthen bonds hundreds of years after the structure is completed. The decorative stucco, the white skin covering the outside, is made from lime mixed with fine sand and ground shell powder, sometimes adding plant resin to increase flexibility and adhesion. This layer not only beautifies the surface but also acts as a moisture barrier and heat reflector, reducing the direct impact of rain and sun on the brick mass. Some restoration studies by the conservation team, led by John Sandy, show that Bagan stucco has the ability to breathe, that is, allowing internal moisture to escape while preventing rainwater from seeping inside. When compared to ancient bricks in Angkor or Ayutthaya, Bagan excels in uniformity, load-bearing capacity, and crack resistance. Perhaps that is why, as Sandy once shared with Reuters, some Bagan stupas still stand intact after strong shocks, not only thanks to construction techniques, but also thanks to the material itself, material born to exist for millennia. Chapter 3: Construction Techniques. Process, Framework, Arch, Foundation. When standing before a large temple in Bagan, many people wonder, how can tens of thousands of tons of brick blocks stand firm for centuries on a foundation that is not at all solid? The answer begins with how the ancients anchored the foundation to the geological base. Instead of digging deep like Western stone structures, Bagan craftsmen created floating or shallow foundations, but maximized the contact area with the soil, often using large brick layers staggered in a staggered pattern to distribute the load. In positions with underlying rock layers, they used bricks combined with pebbles as a cushion layer, creating a floating platform that is both rigid and flexible. Bagan's brick joining technique is a case worth studying. According to the conservation report of the Department of Archaeology and National Museum of Myanmar, brick joints are unusually thin, sometimes only a few millimeters, allowing the bricks to hug each other like a single block. The bricks were ground at the edges or given small grooves for deep mortar adhesion, increasing shear resistance. In large structures, craftsmen also applied locking techniques, that is, interleaving long bricks horizontally and vertically to create three-dimensional bonds, preventing slipping and twisting. The arch and pinnacle sections clearly demonstrate load distribution capabilities. Bagan arches are often not perfect hemispheres but pointed or bell-shaped arches, helping to transmit the load down the walls at a narrow angle, reducing lateral pressure. Many arches also have small gaps between layers, creating microscopic spaces that allow the structure to breathe and reduce compressive force when temperature changes. Structural engineering researcher Sa Tan, in a presentation in the International Journal of Technical Research and Development, called this the intersection between art and mechanics. What is astonishing is how they built high levels on limited soil. Without modern machinery, Bagan craftsmen erected wooden cranes with large pulley wheels, combined with bamboo scaffolding wrapped in tightly braided jute ropes. Labor was organized into teams: brick and mortar fabrication groups, transportation groups, assembly groups, and groups responsible for decoration. This coordination ensured synchronized progress, reducing material waiting time. However, there are still many mysteries. How did they precisely determine the optimal arch angle without modern measuring tools? Why did some contemporary structures choose different foundation and joint styles despite being in the same geological area? These questions are still being answered by 3D research teams and non-destructive surveys, promising to reveal more secrets in the coming years. Chapter 4: Durability against nature, anti-erosion, earthquake, climate. When the rainy season arrives in central Myanmar, winds carrying heavy raindrops lash against Bagan's brick walls. But strangely, many structures still stand firm through hundreds of such rainy seasons. The secret begins with moisture and erosion resistance calculated from the start of construction. Brick walls are often slightly slanted outward, allowing rainwater to slide down quickly, reducing contact time with the surface. The white stucco layer not only reflects heat, but also has sufficient water repellency, allowing internal moisture to escape while preventing water from seeping back in. Bagan's drainage system is also evidence of sustainable thinking. At the base of walls, there are often slanted brick-lined drainage channels leading outward, and some stupas even have small collection pits at corners, acting as sediment filters. The roof and stupa-level structures are designed in steps, creating water flow paths to the ground instead of allowing rain to concentrate pressure at one point. A 2020 report from the Yangon University research team shows that, thanks to this system, the damage rate from rain moisture in originally preserved structures is significantly lower than in structures that have lost their original drainage layers. Regarding vibrations and earthquakes, Bagan has undergone many challenges. The 2016 earthquake damaged hundreds of structures, but it also demonstrated the absorption capacity of ancient bricks and mortar for vibrations. Mechanical physical experiments on ancient brick and mortar samples, published on Science Direct, show they have a lower elastic modulus than modern materials, meaning instead of brittle failure under shock, they tend to deform slightly and then return to their original shape. This flexibility, combined with thin mortar joints and brick locking techniques, helps the entire structure dissipate energy instead of concentrating force at one point. Another factor is the balance between weight and structure. Load-bearing walls up to a meter thick at the lower levels act as large inertial masses, reducing vibration amplitude when the ground shakes. Internal arches and corridors not only have aesthetic or light-guiding functions, but also act as structural bridges, dividing loads and transmitting force to main pillars. Conservationist Yu Nyan Chan, in an interview with MDPI Heritage Science, once said, "In Bagan, every empty space has a reason to exist. They help the structure breathe, expand and contract, and sometimes save it from collapse when the ground shakes." Overall, Bagan is proof that a structure does not need to be immutable to last long. On the contrary, accepting change and flexibility in the face of nature is the key to a 1,000-year lifespan. And it is this philosophy that has made modern conservation engineers learn again from the nameless craftsmen of more than 800 years ago. Chapter 5: Construction Process and Labor Organization. How to complete thousands of structures. To understand how Bagan could erect thousands of structures in just a few centuries, one must imagine this not as individual projects, but as a continuous network of production and construction, almost like a giant medieval machine. Everything starts from the material sources: clay mined along the Irrawaddy River, where fine sediments have accumulated for thousands of years, sand taken from riverbanks in the dry season, limestone burned into quicklime kilns in the eastern hills, plant ash collected from nearby agricultural villages. The material transportation system is an important link. Bricks and lime were transported by wooden rafts downstream or upstream, depending on location, then unloaded onto ox carts to the construction site. These transportation routes formed an economic map that modern archaeology is still reconstructing. In an article in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal, Michael Ongthwin's research team argues that utilizing the river network helped Bagan significantly reduce costs and transportation time, similar to how the Angkor Empire used canals to support massive construction sites. At the construction site, labor was divided into many shifts or teams, each specializing in a stage: brick-making teams, firing teams, transportation teams, rough building teams, stucco decoration teams, and interior finishing teams. Some inscriptions on temple walls record the names of craft groups, sometimes including completion dates for each part, showing tightly controlled progress. This progress often followed phases: foundations and main walls completed before the rainy season, while decoration and interiors done after the dry weather returned. The rhythmic coordination between labor groups reflects a high level of social organization. At the royal level, the pagan court acted as coordinator, providing resources and supervising techniques. At the community level, craft villages specialized by material or stage. According to a ResearchGate study on Bagan archaeological economics, this model ensured uniform quality while allowing technical improvements to spread quickly between structures. Compared to contemporary civilizations, Bagan had an astonishing construction speed. Angkor mobilized tens of thousands of workers for each large temple project, but construction time often lasted decades. Meanwhile, some medium and small temples in Bagan could be completed in just a few months, thanks to moderate labor scale and bricks easy to mass produce. Ancient Southeast Asian cities like Sukhothai or Ayutthaya also used bricks, but did not achieve the level of uniformity and structure density as in Bagan. Ready to mention about Angkor Wat, I want to say the following highlights to prove that Bagan is also great and has the ability to rival wonders in the same Southeast Asia region. Bagan surpasses Angkor Wat in density and architectural diversity. On an area of only about 40 square kilometers, more than 2,000 structures still exist, reflecting centuries of experimentation and creativity by craftsmen. Bagan's brick and stucco materials show extraordinary adaptability to semi-arid climate and shocks, creating a lifespan of millennia despite not using stone blocks. However, Angkor Wat also has superior points over Bagan in stone block scale and symbolic unity. As the world's largest religious stone structure, with perfect mandala architecture and exquisite epic reliefs. What is interesting is that, despite the enormous construction volume, each structure in Bagan still bears its own mark, from arch style, brick joints, to stucco patterns. Perhaps that is proof that, alongside a disciplined organizational system, there still existed a space for freedom and creativity, which turned this complex into a living museum of hundreds of architectural styles, leaving posterity a heritage that is both unified and diverse. Chapter 6: Remaining Mysteries and Open Scientific Questions. Although more than a century of research has passed since Bagan attracted international archaeological attention, there are still countless questions without complete answers. One of the most debated mysteries is the brick joining technique at some large temples, where the joints are almost invisible to the naked eye. Under oblique light, the joint lines almost disappear, creating the feeling that the bricks were cast as a single block. Some hypotheses suggest this is the result of high-precision edge grinding of bricks, while others suspect a special fine mortar welding technique on the surface that we have not fully recreated. The second question relates to the size and arch angle. Many structures have pointed arches with almost uniform opening angles, despite being built in different periods. Is this the result of a royal architectural standard or an optimal angle tested through experience? Recent structural simulations on Science Direct show that this angle maximizes compressive load-bearing capacity and reduces lateral thrust, but does not explain why some contemporary structures use clearly different opening angles. Another mystery is the difference in construction techniques between areas in the same historical period. In some southern temple clusters, brick joints and stucco compositions differ from northern clusters, suggesting multiple parallel schools of techniques. Archaeologist T.R.I., in a 2021 report to UNESCO, hypothesized that this difference reflects a network of craftsmen from different regions converging on Bagan, each group bringing their own traditions. One cannot overlook the human impact on the landscape. The irrigation system once surrounding Bagan, diversion channels, reservoirs, small dams, not only served agriculture, but also provided water and materials for construction sites. Recent satellite imagery research from the Astronomical Data System shows traces of channels with changed flow directions, possibly to prioritize material transportation or protect structures from erosion risks. Currently, international and domestic research teams are applying non-destructive surveying technology, 3D scanning, and digital simulation to decode these questions. Collaborative projects between UNESCO and Yangon University from 2018 to now have created high-resolution digital maps of hundreds of structures, allowing analysis of each brick and crack without touching the relic. Some answers have been revealed, such as discovering inner mortar layers with better humidity balance thanks to microscopic porous structures. But many hypotheses still need verification. Bagan, therefore, still keeps some secrets for itself, as if the craftsmen of the 11th century intentionally left a few puzzles for posterity. And it is these knowledge gaps that motivate science to continue searching, not only to understand the past, but also to protect this heritage against a future full of changes. Chapter 7: Heritage, Conservation, and Lessons for Modern Engineering. When looking back at more than 1,000 years of Bagan's existence, the most obvious thing is that this is not only a cultural treasure, but also a giant university of ancient construction engineering. Each brick, each curved arch, each stucco layer hides principles that modern engineers can still learn from. The ability to select materials suitable for the environment, optimize force distribution in the structure, and utilize natural terrain to protect the building. All are strategies that Bagan practiced from the 11th century. Bagan's fired brick material is not only durable, but also has rare flexibility, allowing the structure to adapt to temperature changes and shocks. This is a clear lesson for the modern construction industry. Not always is harder material better. Sometimes, a dynamic structure that knows how to expand and contract is the key to long-term existence. The way Bagan distributed force, from shallow but wide foundations to pointed arches reducing lateral pressure, also reflects a minimalist but effective mindset, which many engineers today are trying to rediscover in the context of sustainable construction. But heritage does not protect itself. The 2016 earthquake was a warning when more than 400 structures were damaged, many of which lost their original stucco layers or had deformed structures. From then on, restoration efforts coordinated by the UNESCO World Heritage Center with the Myanmar Department of Archaeology have become a race against time and natural degradation. However, this process is not simple. Every conservation decision stands on the fragile boundary between maintaining authenticity and meeting tourism development needs. Some recent restoration projects, such as the Suleimani Temple restoration by the International Collaborative Research Team, have applied traditional techniques combined with modern 3D scanning and material analysis technology. A report published on Taylor and Francis Online emphasizes that this combination helps preserve the original structure and techniques, while ensuring safety for visitors. However, tensions still exist. Local communities want full restoration of structures to attract tourists, while conservationists warn of the risk of new fake ancient construction that loses original value. Bagan teaches us that conservation is not just about keeping what remains, but finding ways for the heritage to continue living in the present. And to do that, dialogue is needed between modern science and traditional knowledge, between material analysis data and the memories of craftsmen who still pass down ancestral techniques. Thank you for joining me on the entire journey to explore Bagan, where each brick, each architectural curve tells a 1,000-year story. If what you heard today makes you more fascinated with history, with the technical mysteries of the ancient world, then that is the greatest happiness for me. Logic Relic will continue to bring you such trips, through time, through civilizations, through structures that seem immortal. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so we don't miss any story. Thank you, truly thank you, for accompanying me.